In this quick video, we're going to do 25 different Google Sheet functions or formulas, and you'll start by, you'll have a document already in your Google Classroom. It'll look something like this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create some random words. Doesn't really matter what they are. It doesn't even have to be necessarily a single phrase, a word, or it could be a phrase, right? Anything that you're going to, any length of text will be totally fine. So I'm going to say Chapel Hill. Okay. So that's our first thing. And the way that I would approach today is that we're going to look at this as a list of tasks, 1 through 25. And the first thing it says is random between. And we're going to do a random between. So it picks a low number and a high number. So from 0 to 100 or 0 to 1,000. It really doesn't matter for our purpose today. And then I'm going to take this little blue dot in the bottom, drag down through the entire yellow range, and you see that I've got random numbers. Every time I refresh the page, just if I refresh, Command R, refresh, or if I type something new, you'll see that it goes through that script of ran between, generates a new number every single time. So these numbers are not really critical that they're any particular number, but so that's okay that they keep refreshing. So we're going to start, that was number 1. Number 2, we're going to do a min. So I'm going to equal min. What is the lowest number in this range? And for this, I can just click the whole column. So somewhere in there I had a 0. Now when it refreshes, I have a 1. Same thing with a max. Grab that whole range. What is my average? What is my median? And then what is my mode? If I don't have a mode, or I get an error with my mode, that's okay. We'll talk about that here when we get down to our if error. And we might see as we go through that we have an error will occur in our mode. So today is a built-in formula in a lot of different spreadsheets, but in Google Sheets, and it tells you what the day is. So it's helpful when you're thinking of something I want to, either compare against today, how many days is it since this date, how many weekdays since this date, how many Wednesdays since it, whatever you would want to do, right? You could figure out how to calculate some of those type things. I could do what is today plus, 14, what's 2 weeks from today. So I pick the date, plus 14 tells me that that is that date. Text. Text will change something in a format. So in this case, I want to take this date from being a date, and I want to see it in a day, like day of the week. So that is going to be a DDD or DDD. 4 Ds will give you the long version of what that is. You could do date, comma, since it's all text, right? I could do date, comma, MMM, comma, YYY, right? I could do shorten those things. I could do however you might want to present that information. You can choose the format, the display format of taking our number 8/20 all the way through, right? So you can see 20. Maybe I want to say also DDDD Thursday. You can do something like that, right? So these little shortcuts for text for converting your days can be used multiple different times. Okay, great. Length. So let's look at our length column, and we're going to compare it to the information over here. So what is the length of this cell? Dog is 3 characters. I'm going to take that number right down here and drag it through. Great. So North Carolina is 14, Chapel Hill is 11. I got the length figure out. Yep. Concatenate is a really powerful formula we'll use it a lot in our actual once we get into Python. But let's say, for example, that I have some names. And I'm going to say and right. So here's my names. I can concatenate them in a couple different ways. So I could do like a concatenate where I take first name and then maybe I add a space, last name. You could obviously drag that through my names. And I want to say, maybe I do a different concatenation. Concatenate where I take my last name, comma, and again, you're going to separate each of these. So this is one item, the space or comma space is one item, and then the E17 is one item, and it's going to go through and do that kind of thing. Right? And that's really helpful for taking information. We'll talk about using the split function in future data camps and other exercises we'll do in our class. They would be pretty helpful for taking something that's already taken like this. Maybe you have a name and you want to split it into different columns from that. We'll talk here once we get down to our right and left how you could use this to do something with right values. But in the meantime, we see that the concatenate is just basically taking two cells, combining them into a new cell. So we figured out concatenate. Let's look at our if statements. So in this case, I want to pick gauge if these words are long or short. So I'm going to pick 5 as my arbitrary rate. So if this cell, this number, is greater than 5, and I can see the way that it's broken down. Is a logical expression or a Boolean expression. Is it true or false? Right? Is this greater than? It is true or false. Is it greater than or equal to? Great, that could be true or false. Is this actually equal to this? True or false, right? You can do a lot of things and it will give me value if true or value if false. So in this case, I'm going to say if it is greater than 5, it's a long word. And if it's not greater than 5, it's a short word. Great. Same thing. Drag it down through my whole list. Great. So I've got my if statements. I haven't even encountered, through just happenstance, I haven't encountered a mode that gave me an error. So that's fine. I'm going to use it as an example, something we know that will give us an error, which is dividing a number by 0. So dividing by 0 gives me an error that looks like this, divide by 0. If I wanted to use the if error, I could say a couple different things. So I could wrap this in an if error, and if that causes an error, say can't divide by 0. One example that I would think this would be pretty useful is if you're having a lot of information, you want to make sure that maybe values are just don't accidentally have a character in it, an alpha character. You could have there's a formula called is number, and if it's not a number, we're true or false, right? If it's not a number like this, false, you could get a true false, and that might be helpful for determining that kind of stuff. So that's if error. So again, you just wrap your calculation that's causing an error, and it might be a calculation, it might be some sort of programming challenge issue that you've not done a function correctly. So here's an example. We looked at our text, right? Text is looking at a cell and then formatting it in a certain way. So if I say text and I just say look at the cell, I'm going to get a slash in A, which is something is wrong. It expected 2 arguments, only got 1, right? If I said comma, 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 I'm going to get an error in A. Got way too many values. I got 4 when I only wanted 2. In A, well, this is what I am expecting the formula to do. If it gives me an error, say wrong. Right? So that tells me something that if I were to be looking and I drag this through my whole column of information, I realize, something's not right. I'm noticing that this is wrong. You would use it that way. So let's look at the next one, number 13, count if. So I want to do a count A. Checks basically is the cell not empty. So in this case, I wanted to pick from my first to the bottom. I should get 25. Excellent. If I said count if, so in this case, I want to say count if, and it says what is the range and then what criteria you're looking for. How many long words do I have? Comma, how many, say, long word? 5 long words. If I say count unique, how many of these things are unique? In this case, I have 10 unique words. I have 10. If I come over here and I say tigers again, I see now that it says 9. What's interesting is it's also case sensitive. It's checking do those two strings, again a string is text, do those two match? And if they do match, then they are unique. I mean, they are identical. If they don't match, they, like even in this case, tigers, even though it says the same word, then I would check, it would give me an error that way, or indicate a new unique. Sum if. So I want to get what is the total length of all my short words. So sum if in this range, it is a short word, total up the number of characters that are here. 16. All right. What is the average length of, let's say, my long words? Average if. What is my criteria range? What am I looking for? Long word, comma, then what is my average in this average range? Happens to be an even 9. Great. So now let's look at transpose. Transpose is, again, if we think about an X and a Y, we have cells that are going alpha, our columns across, and the numbers are our rows down. There'll be times when you have data that is the right number of right number of cells width, but you want it to actually be the way that it is long, or whatever that you might need to do. You'll need to transpose, that's the word, these shapes so that you're now seeing the data in the correct format. So here's an example. Transpose, I want to transpose my A and B. So instead of it being numbers down, I want it to be numbers across. Instead of it saying ran between men all the way across, I'm going to see it now across columns, and I see that that has occurred. It didn't take my conditional formatting, it didn't take my bolding, it just takes the raw data out of those cells and puts them in this format. Excellent. So again, transpose. We did that. Round. Let's find a value here. So maybe this value up here, my average. What is the average number in this whole chunk of 25 numbers? I can do round that value, and then it says how many places. Dot round is a Python formula, so our function, so we'll see those things even throughout Python. So 2 gives me my value to the second. Maybe I say I only want the first one, takes it to that. Say I only want 0, give it, just take me to round it up. There's also round down, so that we'll take a character, so that even if it's at 84, again, it won't be when we refresh, it's going to round it down. Round by default will round up, round down will force a round down. We'll talk about ceiling, those kind of ideas. You can talk about ceiling and floor rounding in Python. All right, so let's look at right. So I want to get the right, even though my value here says Garrison, and it's in this range where I've concatenated them, I want to get the right from that space, because I want to use that in a couple different ways. Right, and I say right from in that cell, how many characters? Well, I could say like 8 characters, right? And that would get me my name. But now when I pull that down, Matthew, I now have a space before Matthew. So what I want to do is I want to find where is that space, and then give me the right, whatever's left from that space on. So what I need to do is I'm going to do like a length of that cell minus, and this is a function that's not in our list, find, I'm searching for the space in that cell. So I can do that, I can drag down and I see Matthew. If I come up here and say, all right, well now I have my first name, I also want to add my middle name, right? So Garrison, I will just, for the kicks, I'll just paste this in, Tyler. And it's going to copy everything from that space on, regardless of the length, to go across. Excellent. Left, same thing, right? So I could say, I want to get the left values. Let's make an email, right? So if you're thinking about our email address, like I want to concatenate our email addresses are our first initial, left of my first initial, G, comma, my entire last name, Reed, plus the string at chccs.k12.nc.us. And I see that it did that for me. If I did the same thing down, right, I'd see m.murdoch at chccs. So again, it's taking my first initial, the entire last name, adding some text to it. So that's a good example of combining our concatenate and our left. Upper equals uppercasing. Upper this. Lower this. Proper. It's like also sometimes referred to as title casing. So you'd see it looks very strange in an email because it's capitalizing after every punctuation mark. In this case, after the at sign and after the period, these uppercasing, that's very strange seeing. But if I had just a list of names, some of them are like lowercase, maybe I'm filling out, I have a form and you know, people put their names in all sorts of different ways. I could create a column that would just clean that up for me, especially if I'm sending something back to them, like in a prompt, hey Joe, thanks for filling out my form, right? That would be a great way to clean up their input into a very visually consistent way. And then unique. Unique, we have a count unique, gives us a number that is unique. The unique will give us what are the items in that list. So in this case, I've got some names here, right? How many of them are there? Count unique. There's 4 different names, right? And I want to get them. What are they? Unique. Okay. Let's say Sally, her name is actually, we'll go back here, fix this, right? Beth. So even though they're not the same input here, they are the same input here when converted to proper, then it shows them in the format here. And this is where we can start to combine some functions. So like sort your unique values. So now it's alphabetically sorted by what is the unique ones. And you're going to see that there's going to be a lot of instances where I've got one function wrapped around another function, or example over here with our left, right, I've got my left function that's within my concatenate function. Maybe I want to take these names over here, the Beth, Joe, Sam, and I want to say transpose, sort, unique, this list. Not only did it take them from this list that is not in that order and convert them across, but it also sorted them. And this is the kind of like a daisy chaining of functions that we'll be doing that will make some really powerful work in your Google Sheets and spreadsheets. And you'll see this as you go through the DataCamp course. So that's a quick video. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Oh, the last one we were going to use was language. I forgot about this. Google's always adding, because this is a Google tool, they are always adding new things that incorporate other Google tools. So Google Translate, I can take a value. In this case, I'm going to take my 10 words. I'm going to convert them from what is my source language, in this case it's English, into what is the language I want them translated into, let's say French. and I can drag that list through this. This is pretty powerful for making some sort of flashcards, making some quick translations if you had something you were going to try to send to someone else, and you just need to figure out what your code is, the country code, so that you can properly use those translations. And it's thinking very hard. But it could be .ja or .es is Spanish. And if you had, I have a list of names of concepts or terms or whatever it is from Spanish. I want them into English, ES to EN. There we are. Here we're starting to see some Japanese loading. It normally doesn't take this long. Let's see if on a refresh we'll get something new here. There we go. So that's pretty cool to use these systems that Google's built to do something that we want to see and can use. So thanks.